Everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CL 650.
Welcome back to Key Pacific Strata Life on CL 650. I'm Tony Gioventi, your host, and now for the last section of the show, we have Dan O'Hearn from Key Pacific Management in New Westminster with us, and we've been talking about the storms and all the other kind of disasters that stratas face every now and then, and that, you know, as the property manager, you guys get to pick up all the pieces and work with the Strata Council to figure out, you know, what happened and, you know, what we could have done differently after it's all over.
We do, and it's been a great show, Tony, because it really addresses some of the concerns that you know, management companies have, and you know, so much of a corporation's budget is spent on scheduled and reactive maintenance, and you know, we'd be lucky if corporations spend 5% on some preventative maintenance. So yeah, I'd love to talk about some of the things you want to do and or that they should be doing during the restoration if we have time, and also preparedness. So
first out, emergency plan.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's responsible for themselves. They should have their own emergency plan.
Mm-hmm.
But the Strata Corporation, what do you entail as the emergency plan that is ideal?
Well, you know what? I'm going to just go a little on a tangent here and say your caller that came in, Melanie, right? She really hit on something that was really key, and you know, you should build a community out of your condominium, and that was probably one of their fail-safe programs. There was that they have a sense of community, and everyone was pulling up their boots and helping each other. So I think that's really critical, and building community starts long before any emergency, right? And it's going to be what's pulling everyone together. But I think each building needs to do like a building audit and create an operations manual, and the operations manual is going to have some of the emergency preparedness items in there. So like what you want to do is in that operations manual, look at what is preventable maintenance to take care of. So sort of things that you might have in there is make sure that you're cleaning the sanitary drains, the perimeter drains, storm drains, doing all your roofing inspections, reviewing the building for hazards that are going to be caused by rain and wind, looking at things around the building, retaining walls, is there slope stability, is there any signs of cracks, any erosion that's happening, check the obvious unstable trees. You'd mentioned all about that. Is the secure signage? I mean, in large windstorms, that can be blown around. It's a hazard. Make sure the steps are clear and secure. Make sure that there's no slipping hazards. Everything has to be solid. Fire exits, they all need to be clear. Safe egress. Always think of the elderly. You know, if you want to know if something is safe, think about your elderly mother or grandmother. Could she negotiate this doorway or these stairs? That's a good way of looking. You want to take care of the those that are going to struggle the most. Adequate signage. A big problem always is emergency lights. I think that you have to understand how long the hallways are going to be illuminated for, and do you have the flashlights and that sort of thing available as well. So, and discuss this process at the AGM, and have a written preparedness plan. Who's going to be responsible for what? Sean had mentioned a good thing to do is have somebody monitoring, a council member or volunteer monitoring during the storms, right? Get specific duties like checking out the roofing. Are the sump pumps still working? Are the gutters clear? Is there water ponding somewhere that's going to be a potential hazard that's going to spill over into an electrical vault or whatever the case might be? So when the storm hits, people should be proactive and not just hunkering down and hoping that things are going to be okay.
Well, and another thing that you mentioned earlier, and I think it came up in Melanie's call as well, is that they didn't really know the status of the individual who was living in the unit with the fire, and that it was necessarily an elderly single person that was living in the unit.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it comes back to the duty of stratas to maintain an updated owner and tenant list.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's not just the owner and tenant, but knowing who's in the units. How many occupants are in the units? Are there any pets that we need to be looking out for and protecting? And
emergency contacts.
Emergency contacts, if they're available. It's you know, there are limits on the amount of personal information that Strata can collect, but most owners are quite happy to volunteer a lot of information that helps this system work much safer for them.
Yeah, if they know the purpose. I mean, the emergency preparedness kit, the other thing you might want to consider having in that is a couple of extra key fobs that they're going to have full access that can be readily...
For the Strata Council.
For the Strata Council,
right.
or for contractors on site, give them access. Roofs are sometimes have latches on them, elevator keys, you might need that as well. current owners contact list that we talked about. How about the phone numbers of public services that you might need, right? We all know the emergency 911, but perhaps there's a contact information at City Hall, your insurance company, the broker, the adjuster's phone numbers, if you know that, the restoration company that's on call. So have the trades list available. During that storm, going back a while now, we actually lost our phones too for about 3 hours. So if anyone had called in, we would have struggled to deal with them right away.
Power seemed to be a really big issue for a lot of buildings, and there are, it depends on the size of the building, the age of the building. Some buildings have backup generators, some don't have backup generators. Some buildings with backup generators ran out of fuel after 4 hours. There was no way, they had no access to get more fuel. The buildings basically shut down, but it cripples buildings because a lot of buildings rely on power to operate their safety and security systems as well.
Sure, and it's going to be more crippling if you don't know what it's operating.
Right.
So part of the building audit that ought to be looked at is what does a generator run? Sometimes it's going to run emergency lights in the hallway. Sometimes those emergency lights are just battery. What happens with your front door and all the fob access to every floor? What's the fail on that? Locked or unlocked?
Exactly.
And if you know these things, then it's just a matter of preparing. But if it catches you by surprise, then it adds incredible delays and puts people at risk. Are the sump pumps wired up? You're going to be able to pump out water in the basement. Are they going to keep going? So this is all stuff that needs to be checked. And part of the preparedness, of course, is running the generator every month, making sure that's kept up and have it cleaned out, because the fuel, it sits there unused, so it starts to clog up. So that all has to be polished out too. So these are all things that strata corporations really have to take ownership of and deal with.
Do you see any big complication in buildings as to whether the fob system in the building locks out the building or doesn't lock out the building, or is it just a matter of whether the strata is prepared for it?
Some lock out, some don't, right? It's going to be the setting, and it's what they need to be prepared for. I mean, Melanie said they did a 24-hour security watch, right? Not a big deal if you knew that was going to happen, right?
Their building locks out. So that's why they had to tape doorways and things open, because once people were outside, they couldn't get back into the buildings. They couldn't get into the units.
And some buildings will still have a key that you can manually unlock the door and let yourself in too, though.
Right.
And perhaps there's specific doors that you don't fob and you can have manual access, and people understand that they use the side door during power outages. I mean, these are all sort of things that you need to think through, and it's that preparedness plan.
Well, a number of issues also came up around recreation facilities, swimming pools, hot tubs, those types of issues. Are they continued to be accessible during power outages, during emergency situations? Are they closed off? What's the status of them? Are there emergency backup systems? Buildings have advanced CCTV systems throughout the buildings that shut down. It was kind of a bit of a wake-up call, I think, in a lot of ways for our kind of simple climate that we seem to live in, that we do have the potential to have some serious situations occur.
And it's time to make some lemonade out of it. You need a disaster every now and then, I think, to really realize where you're falling short. And I think from Melanie's comments there, it was a chance to build the community a little bit more. And they're going to take this experience and make things better for the future for their building, right?
I think my mantra now for the next year or two, probably for every strata and every column and every story, is going to be the question, do you have your emergency plan ready? Because it was really surprising how many stratas got into serious difficulty over this last storm.
And I think that's an awesome plan. I mean, you have to look at that. And I don't know. Did we have a moment to talk about what to do while you're getting restoration?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I was just chomping at the bit listening to it. While you're having this done, you got to give cooperation, right? I know it's all inconvenient, but you have to let the drying equipment operate. It's noisy. Yes.
Yeah, people unplug these things.
People unplug it because they said it's noisy, but you compound the problem if you do that. You have to allow access. They have to Albert's involved in a multi-unit, over 180 units in one of our buildings. We're still struggling to get access to inspect the damage in some units. I mean, that is troublesome for everybody.
Right.
So allow the access. Remove valuables just for peace of mind. We never had any issues or problems, but please remove all your valuables just for peace of mind. Anticipate that the repair and restoration is going to be 3 or 4 times longer
than what you think.
You figure it's just a sheet of drywall, it's 2 days work. Okay, that now means it's 8 days work for sure.
Right.
These always take longer. Make sure you have homeowners insurance, and if you can't compel people to have it, but I don't know how many people are surprised that they can't stay in their unit, and if they don't have homeowners insurance, they're stuck living at friends and family and relatives. And if everything's taking weeks or months, that's a problem. And last thing would be make sure clarify what the communication process is. Is it through the property manager? Is it through the restoration company? Or is it some sort of online communication? But clarify that. There's no sense you calling 3-4 locations trying to get one answer, right?
Well, and it's really helpful for the Strata Corporation to know who the key person is who's going to coordinate this project, right? It's a single project. We need to figure out how to get the restoration done on the building so we can get back to normal.
Yep.
No, it's definitely a test. I think Strata Corporations, here's the question for you. Do you have your emergency plan?
Great question.
Are you ready for what may happen next? Do you know how your building systems work? Do you know who would be in touch? Do you have an updated owners and tenants list in your building so you know who your occupants are? Do you know how you can help the seniors? Personal safety above all and beyond all is the most important thing I think we need to look at. Yeah, no, it's been a good test, I think, for everyone as we're dealing with buildings and building operation systems. You're listening to Key Pacific Strata Life on 650 Sea Isle. I'm Tony Giaventi, your host. Dan O'Hearn, thanks for joining us on the show. It's been a pleasure. If you have any questions, contact us at questions@strata.life. And happy Strata living.